You're watching a football game when one of the teams wins the championship. You cheer and watch as the winning team huddles together and throws some of their teammates onto each other's shoulders. This is great, but then you watch as the opposing team crouches on the field with their heads in their hands. Suddenly, a player from the winning team stops in his place of joining his cheering teammates. Instead, he goes over to some of the opposing players and lifts them up, congratulating them on a job well done. The scenario I stumbled across on TikTok by user Lopez.Alec is an example of how leadership can be established in any type of situation. For example, in the video, although the football player and the opposing team weren't technically participating in small group communication, the player still prioritized the opposing team's feelings before his own, which is a very important leadership trait to have. Although I'm definitely no football player who just won a championship, I wanted to try and experiment with my own type of leadership. I was thinking about what I could do in order to try this out, and that's when I had the idea of painting something. However, I wanted to add a little twist to it. I started by asking my sister Kira and my brother-in-law Seth to join my small group. For the painting, I decided to split it into 3 different canvases, each of which would be designated a different scene that would be put together as one at the end of the project. Throughout this project, I needed to focus on 4 areas of interest important to small group communication. What would my vision be? How would I problem solve and adapt to any issues I may face? What kind of leadership style did I want to establish? And how would my group communicate with one another? In small group communication, establishing a vision is essential. In fact, in our Introduction to Leadership textbook, it's said to be a trait found in 1 of 7 highly effective people, and is also one of the 4 factors that account for extraordinary leadership performance. Vision itself can be described as being an idea about the future that requires an act of faith by followers. Visions paint an ideal image of where a group or an organization should be going. To establish the vision I had for my project, I first explained to Kira and Seth that although I knew none of us were exceptionally gifted in the field of painting, I knew we could come together to create a project that could be better than we would expect. I also established a vision for my project in which the 3 of us would use collaboration, communication, and awareness in order to successfully create a 3-part painting. I didn't run into any personal conflicts during my project. The only thing that happened was a little bit into our painting, I accidentally messed up my star and I felt terrible because it was a completely different color compared to the themes Kira and Seth had going on in their paintings. Thankfully, Kira ended up having a solution to my problem. She told me to use a blow dryer and to put a different color of paint on top of my star after it dried. In our textbook, conflict is described as being multifaceted and complex, and while there is no magic bullet for resolving all conflicts, knowing different approaches can help a leader employ the effective strategies for solving conflict. In this case, my vision, which revolved around using communication and awareness in order to create a painting, was threatened. However, using Kira's suggestion, a solution was provided and we sort of adapted to a new vision. We established that even if one of our paintings became messed up visually, our project would still end up satisfying because we would have created it together. I would say I'm a relationship style type of person. As the textbook states, in a group situation, sensing and feeling the company of others is appealing to these people. I enjoy the company of people and I want everyone's opinions to be heard because I know what it's like to be left out of a decision where your voice might have had some influence. This being said, at the start of my project, I approached a relationship-oriented leadership. This leadership approach allowed me to focus primarily on the well-being of my followers, how they relate to each other, and the atmosphere in which they work. In this case, my followers would obviously be Kira and Seth. To try and establish these 3 characteristics of a relationship-oriented leadership, I made sure my group members were comfortable throughout the duration of my project. For example, I did this by asking, "How are you guys doing?" or "Do you need me to grab anything for you?" We also joked around with each other and would compliment each other's paintings. In terms of the atmosphere, I turned on some Christmas music to fit the mood of the painting so there would be no awkward silences during our painting session. My sister also lit a candle, which was nice. The most interesting thing to me about how my group communicated involved the different strengths each member was able to bring to the table. In our textbook, a strength is an attribute or quality of an individual that accounts for successful performance. When members of a team are able to combine their own strengths together, a group is more likely to be successful. To further describe this, the authors of a book entitled Strengths-Based Leadership established 4 domains of leadership strengths based off of the StrengthsFinder quiz. These 4 domains include executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Personally, I would say the biggest strength I brought to the group was in the domain of relationship building. I wanted everyone to feel connected throughout our project. I also wanted the environment to be interesting and positive. As for Kira, I found it interesting how her strength ended up being in the domain of strategic thinking. In the textbook, this can be described by words like input, intellection, and strategic. When I messed up a part of my painting at the beginning of the project, I didn't know how to fix it. However, Kira gave me a solution that did end up fixing my problem. She also did things like giving me advice on how to paint my star at the beginning of the project and how to use different kinds of brushes, which was helpful. For Seth, I found it interesting how, like me, his strength ended up being in the domain of relationship building. In our textbook, this can be described by words such as connectedness, empathy, positivity, and relator. When I called part of my painting ugly at one point, Seth came in to cheer me up. He said things I would relate to, like, I'm not even good at my painting, and yeah, this definitely isn't a strong skill of mine. Another thing I found interesting was how, even though Seth and I shared the strength of relationship building while Kira shared the strength of strategic thinking, our group dynamic was still different from what I thought it would originally be like. The textbook explains how effective teams possess broad groupings of strengths and work best when all 4 domains of leadership strengths are represented on their teams. Although there were only 2 domains present between the 3 of us, we still had different kinds of tips for each other, which changed the way we did our projects and interacted with each other. For example, we looked to Seth and I to kind of hype us up, while we looked to Kira to give us painting tips. Based on this, I would say the book is right when it describes a group as being successful if each member possesses a different strength and brings that strength to the table. My project, small group, and leadership dynamics actually went a lot smoother than I thought they would. During the brainstorming period, when I explained my initial idea to my team members, I asked them if they had any other suggestions or ideas on what we could do for the drawing. We all collaborated on what to do and came up with an idea together after listening to everyone's opinions. Although the final image didn't come out like I thought it would, I still appreciate how smooth our teamwork was and how light the atmosphere stayed throughout the project. To wrap things up, my project did correlate with a lot of the communication principles present in our textbook. For example, having different strengths present in my group did change the dynamic of our teamwork for the better. When it came to including the members of my group in the decision-making process, because they were included, they became more willing to give their input and to share their ideas with everyone. Another example of how my project correlated with the communication principles present in our textbook is how creating a positive working environment actually helped our teamwork to be better and helped us to create a better project in the end. In our textbook, it explains how people feel better and work better when the climate in which they work is positive. This can be done by attending the 4 areas of climate, relationships, communication, and meaning. Communication is a key area to focus on if you want to have a successful outcome in anything you do related to group communication. By establishing an environment where each member feels included, appreciated, and encouraged to share their ideas, work ethic improves and each member may put more effort into whatever job they're assigned. Without communication, conflict would persist and nothing would ever get done. By doing things like creating a vision, adapting to any conflict your group may encounter, establishing leadership roles, and encouraging group communication, any group's chance of becoming successful is heightened drastically.